Go.
Hello, my name is Ben Aguilera, and I will be speaking on the undocumented immigrant identity today. Before I start, I want to talk about the significance and why it's important to me. I myself am an immigrant. I immigrated from the country of Ecuador in, I want to say, 1997. I left when I was 6 years old. And I know how hard it is being an immigrant, being a newcomer into this country, and the difficulties that come with not being a citizen as well. Even though I came here through legal status, I still did not obtain my citizenship until years later that my mom applied for it. So seeing as I had that connection being an immigrant and also having undocumented friends, I wanted to look more into how the identity of immigrant, specifically undocumented immigrant, is being shaped. I want to start off with a quote. So mass migrations do not just happen, they are produced. And migrants do not just involve any possible combinations of countries, they're patterned. This is by a famous sociologist who studied immigration and migration. And I put it up here because I believe it shows that people don't just come to this country because they want to. Most of the time it's based on globalization, it's based on economic issues that are either occurring in their country, also natural disasters like hurricanes, or like the potato famine, why the Irish came here during the past. So my research questions is pretty much going to title this. It'll be, what is the identity of the undocumented immigrant? How is that identity being shaped and molded? And what are the implications of such identity? So first of all, I just want to go and start on a brief history of immigration, specifically here in the United States. I wanted to focus on 4 different time periods. I'll briefly touch up on them. So the first one is a settlement of colonies in the 17th century until the middle of the 19th century. So now you're talking about the colonization of the Americas. Some Europeans coming here, colonizing it. I meant the British. And then you have 1883 to 1930. You don't see a lot of migration going on at that time, mainly Europeans, but it was very minimal. Not a lot of Mexicans, very, very little bit. Not a lot of Latin Americans either as well. And pretty much anywhere else was very, very minimal, if anything. Then you have the movement within the United States and North America. You're talking about the Great Migration, the African Americans moving up north, and again, everything happens for a reason. That was due to the discrimination that was occurring for them. They would not be able to get jobs, so it was pretty much based off the economic and social movements that were happening at the time. And then also talk about 1965 and presently today. So pretty much now you have a huge influx of immigrants coming from Latin America, Mexico, China, and this is due to policies changing, which I will touch up on the next slide. So these are just some quick major laws and policies that have affected immigration, which I will touch up on a couple more than others. So the first one is in 1891, the establishment of the government's exclusive overlook over pretty much immigration. So now the federal government has the ability to make decisions, make a policy that will not just affect one state, but the whole United States in general. In 1907, the Gentleman's Agreement, pretty much it restricted the Japanese from coming here. It allowed the Japanese to come here, but it restricted them from pretty much becoming citizens. So they made an agreement with Japan that said they can come here to work, but you cannot issue them passports. On top of that, they could really only come to Hawaii, which is not North America. So it's part of America, but they weren't really allowed into the United States per se. Then you had the 1991, the Dillingham Commission. Now what that did, they pretty much issued a report on the number of immigrants that were, pretty much on the population of immigrants that were there at the United States at that time. And pretty much they based a bunch of quotas off of that report, which was very inaccurate. And then you had the 1917 Asian bar zone. Now, what that did essentially, it pretty much stopped any immigration from Asia, except Japan and Philippines, of course, because they had an agreement with employment. Also, to speak on that briefly, before that, in 1882, they had the Chinese Exclusion Act, which I didn't put on there, but I'll briefly talk about it. Very similar to the Asian bar zone. So in 1882, they pretty much banned all Chinese from coming here, and later on, they would create the 1917 Asian bar zone, which would pretty much stop all Asians in general, except again the Japanese and the Philippines. And then you had the 1921 the Quota Act, which again it was based off the Denham Commission, and it pretty much limited the amount of Europeans that were coming here. They didn't like the southern and Eastern Europeans, so they wanted to pretty much make sure that they would stop their population from growing, and they based it off the report, which pretty much reduced the amount of Europeans that were coming out the country. And we're talking about the Jewish, the Italians, the Polish, those type of Europeans that were pretty much shut down on as soon as they came here. And then in 1924, the Johnson-Reed Act, which limited the annual European immigration. And in 1965, you had the Nationality Act, the Immigration Nationality Act, which pretty much allowed, I guess you could say, opened the immigration doors for immigrants to come here. And ever since then, the population has grown tremendously. And then I included the 1990 Immigration Act specifically because I'm going to talk about Latino immigration, and that is one of the key policies that pretty much allowed a huge influx of Latin Americans to come into this country. Some key concepts that I want to talk about are going to be the social construction of race. So pretty much this notion that race, there's no biological trait that can say you're black, white, Ecuadorian, anything essentially, because we're all mixed genes wise. So because of that, race is socially constructed. We decide who you are based on sometimes your skin color, and sometimes not even, because when the Irish and the Jewish came here, they were discriminated against, and some of them were actually seen as black until they assimilated to the culture and became white. And then I also will talk about self and identity, specifically the symbolic interactionism, which was pretty much studied by the sociologist Bloomer. And it's pretty much saying that society is always in a process of being created through the interpretations and the definitions of actors in a situation. So this concept that we're actors, that every day we act, we have our own social roles that we need to fulfill. And it could be the role of a student, the role of a worker, the role of a son, the role of a parent. And the only way we do these roles is through interactions with our society. And then also assimilation. So this notion that you come into this country and you need to pretty much become embedded into the culture. You need to take upon the culture, partake in the culture. When you're not, most of the time it's not seen as something good. You need to learn English when you come here. That's just automatic. It's not really open to, okay, let's speak this language, because everything here is all English. And then transnationalism, which is essentially that you're able to keep these cultural binds between yourself, where you're at located in your country, and then your previous country of origin. So me being here, I'm able to talk to my friends in Ecuador, my family, so I'm able to keep these social bonds between two countries. So pretty much balancing two different types of cultures. And then also, I'll briefly talk about the DREAM Act and DACA. So pretty much the DREAM Act was, which has yet to pass, but it's pretty much meant to help all these students, aid them in their financial aid, also allow them to become citizens after a certain amount of time. Again, it has not passed, but DACA has passed, which is pretty much a deferred action. Excuse me. So it pretty much helps all these students that are going to college and are not able to pay for college, they're allowed to pay out-of-state tuition, which is still fairly priced, but it still helps them out there, and also gives them the ability to work for 2 years and renew that as time goes by as well. So research methods. So what I did, I was a qualitative study. I had interviewed 4 subjects, 3 which were college students. The ages range from 18 to 25, and one which was a mother. Her age was around 55, I believe. So this is my conclusion and pretty much my findings as well. So what was it that I found throughout my interview process and through my lit review as well? So how is the identity being shaped by these undocumented immigrants? And it's through various variables. For one, it's being shaped by assimilation. It's being shaped by you coming to this country and learning to assimilate to the culture. So in doing so, you kind of also assimilate into the notion of who you are as an individual in this country. So if I am Ecuadorian, it pretty much will go off how Ecuadorians are perceived in this country, not so much how I can really set forth and present myself. Also transnationalism, so their identity is being shaped by 2 different cultures. So it's being shaped by the American culture that they are trying to assimilate to if they haven't already, and also their previous country of origins culture. So like again, I'll use myself as an example. So it will be Ecuador and the United States. For my subjects, they would still try to keep their cultural ties and their cultural traditions, like eating chicken. For one of my subjects during Christmas was one of their traditions. Excuse me. And then myself and society. So essentially that there's a connection, that it's a reciprocal connection between yourself and society. One cannot work without the other. Yourself is being shaped by interactions with others in society. So again, it goes back to this notion of assimilation. So you're assimilating with this culture, with these people that are trying to teach you to become this type of way. So because of that, it's your identity is being shaped through interactions with others. And based off of that as well, one of the people that shaped that is your parents. There was this, throughout my research, this reoccurrence that kept coming up, that the parents were like, don't be like me, I want you to be more successful than me. So they learned to become something else. They learned to strive for something more. And then institutions. So pretty much they're being shaped by schools. A number of my subjects pretty much told me how they learned about their identity. They learned about their legal and undocumented status through school, through teachers, through them knowing that they can't apply for financial aid, through seeing their classmates get licenses and they could not get licenses. So part of the identity was shaped through that and learning who they were as a person. And most of that was done through their adolescence. So it was done pretty much in high school for the most part. Some a little earlier than that, but they could not really take it into context in terms of what was really happening at that time until they got to their adolescence and learned, what it is to be legal versus illegal. But all of my subjects don't really identify themselves as illegal immigrant or undocumented immigrant. They just see themselves as a person. That's what kept coming up, that I am not undocumented, I'm not illegal, I'm just a student, I'm just a mother. And then also to end off on religion. Religion played a part in all my subjects. The institution of religion plays a huge role in shaping your values and your morals. And for my subjects, they still kept that bind of their religion from their previous country and brought it here and kind of created their own enclave. So try to find their own group that they could belong to and shape their identity through that. Thank you.